It's D-U-E-U tell. I see you by this point, you're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, man. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it, let's do it. We gon' make this thing official, you heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, yeah.
Welcome to Football Game Plan's NFL All 32 show. I am Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and we have an action-packed show lined up for you guys today. We're going to be joined with Chris James, who's going to talk fantasy football. We're going to give you some of our best bets heading into the weekend. But as always, we like to start with the NFL Power Rankings for Week 13. It's just weird to say that we're in Week 13 of the 2020 NFL season. So without further ado, let's take a look at number 32 on our list. The New York Jets will always lead off our power rankings until they are able to notch their first win of the season. This is an important stretch of games for Jets quarterback Sam Darnold, who has been very inconsistent and oft injured during his 3-year career as gangrene signal caller. Last week was his first game back coming off of an injured shoulder, and he was a bit rusty, to put it nicely. He threw 2 interceptions and mismanaged a couple of situations in what was a very winnable game for the Jets. If he wants to remain a part of their future plans, he will have to show marked improvement over the last 5 games to do so. Jacksonville lost their 10th straight game last week to the Browns, and if it wasn't for a Week 1 upset against the Indianapolis Colts, we will be staring at potentially 2 winless teams this season. The saving grace for the Jaguars is that we're seeing some talent start to emerge on that roster, and if they can ever get the quarterback situation solved, this team can definitely make the jump from worst to first. Moving on to teams 26 through 30, and the Dallas Cowboys blew an opportunity on Thanksgiving to seize control of the NFC East. Now they'll have an uphill battle to accomplish that goal. Speaking of Thanksgiving, it was the last time we saw Matt Patricia as head coach of the Detroit Lions, as he and general manager Bob Quinn were relieved of their duties after a loss to the Houston Texans. Chicago has lost 5 straight games and is just spiraling in the wrong direction. And Cincinnati had a chance to win last week against the Giants. They played some competitive football, but just couldn't get out of their own way to secure the victory. Neither could the Philadelphia Eagles, who lost to Seattle on Monday Night Football. Quarterback Carson Wentz's struggles have been well documented, and while a change to rookie quarterback Jalen Hurts could potentially boost their offense, it is unlikely to happen because of a hefty contract for Carson Wentz. So they will need number 11 to work himself out of this funk that he's in and start to play better. Now, defensively, they've been competitive, but on the other side of the ball, they got to get it going or will find themselves missing the playoffs for the first time in 4 seasons. Teams 21 through 25 features a group that has shown flashes of success, but also flashes of inconsistency. I feel like that aptly describes both Carolina and Los Angeles. Those are 2 young teams still trying to figure out how to win games. Houston looks to be on the right track after their Thanksgiving victory over the Detroit Lions, and the Washington football team head coach Ron Rivera was able to get a victory on Thanksgiving as well, putting his team in 2nd place in the NFC East. Now, they've gotten swept by the Giants, so they will need a big blue loss in order to take over first place completely. What's been good about this Washington football team offense is that they're starting to find their footing on the ground, and the defense revert back to its opportunistic form that we saw from them way back in the early parts of the season. I feel like this team is getting hot at the right time, which puts them firmly in the division and playoff race. Taking a look at teams 16 through 20, and while there are some ugly wins on the New England Patriots schedule, there are still wins nonetheless. And Atlanta plays some competitive football since interim head coach Raheem Morris has taken over the reins, upsetting the red-hot Las Vegas Raiders last weekend. The 49ers are a well-coached football team that will be a tough out for any opponent the rest of the way. And Minnesota was able to scratch and claw their way back to a victory against the Carolina Panthers, one that saw wide receiver Chad Beebe go from the GOAT to the hero of that ball game. The New York Giants have won 3 straight games and are now in sole possession of first place in the NFC East. Unfortunately, they lost their starting quarterback Daniel Jones to a hamstring injury for at least the foreseeable future, and they will now turn to Colt McCoy to help keep this team afloat and atop the NFC East standings. He has a tough challenge this weekend as they travel out west to take on the surging Seattle Seahawks. Now, moving right along as we take a look at teams 11 through 15, this is a make-or-break group of the rankings. Indianapolis got spanked last weekend by the Tennessee Titans, who were able to avenge their own beatdown from the Colts just a few weeks earlier. Miami got a win against the Jets and hope to continue their winning ways as they look to secure a playoff spot. Now, Baltimore took a tough loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers on Wednesday and really needs to go on a run in order to make the playoffs. And the Raiders, who looked like one of the top 5 teams in the league just a few weeks ago, are scratching their heads after getting destroyed in Atlanta by the Falcons. Now it's time for the Arizona Cardinals to decide what type of team they want to be, because up until this point, they've been nothing but highly inconsistent. They find themselves sitting at 6-5 on the season and in a very tough NFC West division where they could get usurped by the San Francisco 49ers and find themselves completely out of the playoff picture. As we move into the top 10, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers seem to have offensive struggles despite having a roster that's stacked with premier offensive talent across the board. Los Angeles reminds me a lot of the Bucs in the sense that you can't really gauge what you're going to get from them week to week. Cleveland is alive and well, playing a great brand of football, which has them with their first non-losing season since 2007. And Tennessee looks exactly like they did last year around this time, making them a serious player in the AFC. Now, the Green Bay Packers looks like a serious player in the NFC with how well they're currently playing. The Packers are on fire offensively and are still playing very opportunistic defense. Now, they'll need that defense to continue to tighten up if they want to make a deeper run in the postseason this year. Now we take a look at the top 5, and there are no real surprises here. Pittsburgh suffered a huge blow to their defense with the loss of edge rusher Bud Dupree to an ACL injury. Now Kansas City took it to the Bucs last weekend down in Tampa, but must learn how to keep their foot on the gas or they'll let the wrong team hang around and find themselves getting beat. The same for the Buffalo Bills, who let things get a little bit too tight for comfort last week against the Los Angeles Chargers. And if the Seahawks are peaking at the right time, that's dangerous for anybody in the NFL, and they're peaking on both sides of the ball. But keep an eye on the New Orleans Saints, who are on an 8-game winning streak thanks in part to a strong run game and excellent defense. They are also winning without their starting future Hall of Fame quarterback Drew Brees, and seeing how they are still dominant without him doesn't bode well for the rest of the NFC when he does return to the lineup. This looks to be the best team in the conference so far and figured to go very far in the playoffs. We'll take a quick commercial break and be back with more Football Game Plan's NFL All 32. Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by Ninth and Lux. Visit the website ninethandlux.com and check out the clothing gallery. Do You Music with featured artist IW and his latest album, Season 2. You can check that out on iTunes as well as doyoumusic.com. Nesby Phipps, Art, Life, Entertainment. NesbyPhipps.com. Grind It Out Fitness. Visit the website grinditoutfitness.com and download the app. And now it's time to talk starting, sitting, sleepers as far as lineups are concerned. I'm joined with Chris James at CJ Florida 9. Follow him on Twitter. He's a great follow, great football mind. Chris, looking at your starting lineup first. Now, last week you had Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a sit, which was smart. This week you have him as a start. Explain why this is the week he wants to get out there on the field. You want him to get out there on the field in your lineup.
Sure. So let's just go to his coach. I feel like Andy Reid might just be good at football and understanding it and game planning. So last week, against a really good run defense that honestly thinks they have a better pass defense than they do, I'm going to throw for 1,000,000 yards in the first quarter. This week, against a run defense that doesn't stop people and what probably won't be the best weather, I'm going to give the ball to my first-round running back. He's going to get all the opportunity. And since he's actually really talented, even though some people might not believe that, he's going to have a really good game. So watch out for Clyde Edwards-Helaire to put up some points and get you in the playoffs or get you that first round bye.
Hey, let me throw a receiver at you that's on your start as well. Allen Robinson makes sense out of that Bears situation, and I mean, because on paper they have talent. We talked about Jacksonville earlier, but the Bears are the same way. They got a lot of talent, and Allen Robinson is dealing with the worst luck at quarterback. So why do you have him as a start this week against Detroit?
Because the Bears, even though their quarterback situation is understand one thing that I don't think enough people give credit. The most underrated wide receiver in the NFL since he's been in the league is Allen Robinson. He has played with the likes of Blake Bortles, Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles. With all due respect to all those guys, they're better than me. But seriously, that's who he's played with. And what does he do? Last week, 2 touchdowns. This is what he does. So he's going to get peppered with targets, and he's going to come down with the ball because that's what Allen Robinson does. And in this Detroit game, since they just let go of their coaching staff, you're going to see them pepper him with more targets.
And in college, he played with Christian Hackenberg. So it's been a rough football life for him as far as guys throwing him the football. We got to go back and see who his high school quarterback was, because maybe that dude actually was pretty doggone good, right?
It was me.
Let's move on to your sitting lineup. And at quarterback is shocking because this guy is coming off of a fantastic week, and that's Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, and it's circumstance. So last week, I knew what they were going to try to do. They were playing Detroit, and they were going to put up big numbers because that's what it was set up to do. This week, it's circumstance-based. Indy had a not-so-great game last week, but I think they're going to scheme well this week against Deshaun Watson and company. Plus, you just lost your number one receiver. We're still seeing if the Brandon Cooks thing will work as the number one receiver. So I just don't think he'll have the requisite pieces to put up really good numbers. Does not mean you sit him. If he's your quarterback on your roster, you're probably going to have to start him, but just have lowered expectations. You might have to take that pop shot, like I talked about with a guy like Gabriel Davis, who could put up big points to supplement Deshaun Watson not getting to his projected point total.
All right, now we move on to sleepers. And what's interesting is that we're staying with quarterbacks. You have Mitch Trubisky. Here's a sleeper. Why?
I have Mitch Trubisky here as a sleeper because, to be honest, every quarterback who is worth their salt has a really good matchup this week. So you're probably playing him. But if you're one of those unlucky few who either plays in a 12-team league or, like myself, has Tom Brady on a bye, you might need someone who can put up points. We've seen Mitchell Trubisky in the past be able to do it. He's athletic. They're going to let him use his legs most likely because, unfortunately, David Montgomery has not been the player that they thought he was going to be. And again, he has Allen Robinson on his team. And one thing that Mitchell Trubisky is smart enough to understand, hey, he's really good. I'm going to throw him the ball, and they can probably put up points against a poor Detroit defense.
Yeah, he's so inconsistent because there was one drive against the Packers. So, okay, he's getting the ball out quick. He's getting the targets. They're moving the football down the field. Then he throws a deep ball into double coverage. You're like, yo, what are you doing, man?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right?
I try to be nice on shows, so I'm just going to not talk about it.
So we'll take another quick break and be back with more football game plans, NFL All 32.
Well, the game of football has taught me so many things, man. Now, think about the huddle we have right now, right? I tell people this all the time. There's a reason why they call it a huddle. You know, people have been huddling all their lives, trying to find ways to enhance each other's lives. The great teams do that all the time. The great teams do that. The better the huddle, the better the team. And so it's simple, man, how if you huddle for all the right reasons, we wouldn't have Ferguson. We wouldn't have some of the challenges that we have in our society. But as we all know, there's always a moment when somebody doesn't belong in the huddle. And yet we have to continue to move on. We got to continue to play. So the game of life, man, is always starting with the huddle. And for me, I'm lucky enough to know that, you know, by the graces of God, man, it's been a nice huddle. It's been a nice huddle. And if I just keep making sure that he's in front of me, I'm gonna be all right.
I love football. I cannot get enough of football. I watch it on every level.
The emotional release. You know, whether it's an exciting play that gets you all jacked up and juiced, or whether it's the fact that you're able to pour everything you have. Whatever frustration you had that week, you can put into that first kickoff coverage, that first block that you have, whatever it might be.
And I couldn't think of anything better to do to fill that void that you have as a football player than to get into coaching.
You get a chance to release a lot of emotion that you otherwise have no place to release. There's nothing else like that.
Again, the relationships you build and the people you're around and watching the guys compete, not just on the football field, but in life after they get done playing. It's just an amazing game.
Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by Financial Coaching LLC, Investment, Retirement, Security. Stewardship Credit. Financial growth is in your hands. StewardshipCredit.com. Adrienne Marie Photo, photographer, writer, management. AdrienneMariePhotography.com. Lock Multimedia. In our best bet segment, I love this part of the show because we take a look at some of my favorite prop bets for the NFL heading into the weekend. In the Dolphins-Bengals game, I'm betting that we'll see 2 to 3 turnovers in this contest that will potentially feature Ryan Fitzpatrick and Brandon Allen at quarterback. Forecasting 1 turnover each will put us right at that number that allows us to hit this prop at plus 120. This prop to me would be my most confident play on Sunday. In the Colts-Texans game, which is going to be interesting to watch from a Texans standpoint because of the suspension of wide receiver Will Fuller, I think we'll see their defense put together an encore performance against Detroit, at least enough to where the Colts will have to punt or will have more punts than Houston. At plus 170, I have more confidence in the Texans offense to find points and score more so than Indianapolis, especially in the second half. So I see a first half where the Texans defense shows an ability to force some punts before things get haywire, and both offenses go back and forth in the second half. Call me crazy, but I still like the pieces on Detroit's offense on paper. And when you factor in the opposite quarterback in Mitch Trubisky and his struggles, I think the Lions can get the first score of the ball game. And at plus 250, I'm banking on that score being a touchdown. We may see 2 series of punts by both teams, but I expect Matthew Stafford and that Lions offense to get into the end zone and on the scoreboard first. I'm looking at that Titans game, and I envision a Browns defense that has gotten better, focusing all on the run game and really clamping down on third down. On the other side, I see the same thing for the Titans defense. Points will be at a premium, but touchdowns will be at more of a premium in this ball game. I only see 3 to 4 touchdowns being scored in the contest. Expect a lot of field goals between the 2 potential playoff teams, and at plus 370, that looks like a really good prop to play. And finally, at some point, the Eagles are due for a great start offensively, so why it can't be this week against Green Bay? At plus 410, I expect the Eagles to be able to get on the board first against the Packers, albeit a field goal, but still, that will be progress for them considering how they've looked flat offensively the last couple of games. If this holds true, what a great return it would be on this particular prop bet. Now let's preview some games. We'll start here in New York where the Jets play host to the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders need to bounce back in quickly, so having to face the Jets looks to be just what the doctor ordered. Expect the Raiders to not waste any time in keeping the Jets reeling, avenging their loss to Gang Green from last season. Now, for the second time in as many weeks, the Saints take on the Falcons, and we'll learn a lot about the adjustments Raheem Morris made to slow down the Taysom Hill train. I think the defense of New Orleans will be the key here as they'll get their 9th straight victory on the season. Cleveland travels to Tennessee to take on the Titans, and this is another prove-it type game for the Browns, who already won one of these games against Indianapolis earlier in the season. This, to me, is a tougher task, which is why I'm trusting the Titans to get the job done against the Browns. The Bengals and Dolphins meet up in South Florida, and while Brandon Allen gave a valiant effort last week against the Giants, he was ultimately the reason why they ended up losing the game. So look for the Dolphins to keep it rolling here and pick up their 8th win on the season. Indy and Houston meet up in an AFC South battle. The Texans will try to play spoiler the rest of the way. The loss of Will Fuller will definitely hurt their offense, and this is a bad matchup for them to not be at full strength offensively. I like the Colts. a pivotal NFC West matchup between the Rams and Cardinals, two very helter-skelter type teams. And I trust the Rams defense more so than I trust Arizona, and that'll be how they'll knock off the Cardinals. Philly has their hands full this week facing the Packers, and I don't trust the Eagles offense to take advantage of a suspect Packer defense, so look for Green Bay to roll in this one. Now, New England looks to keep their playoff hopes alive against the Chargers. This is a Bill Belichick versus a rookie quarterback matchup, one in which that seemingly always favors Belichick, so I like the Patriots. Detroit and Chicago meet up, and the Lions will be led by interim head coach Darrell Bevell, and he'll treat this as an audition for the job permanently. I can trust their offense more than the Bears here, so I'm taking Detroit to get the win. Jacksonville travels to Minnesota to take on the Vikings, and Minnesota still has some flickering playoff hopes here and needs this win. It'll be a tight one, but they'll get the job done against the Jaguars. New York travels to Seattle to take on the Red Hot Seahawks. Now, this is a tough matchup for Colt McCoy, and we'll see that Seahawks defense feast on that throughout this ball game. I like Seattle. Sunday Night Football features an AFC West rivalry between the Broncos and Chiefs, and the Broncos pose a threat with their passing game, but it won't be enough to outgun Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. I'm taking the Chiefs. The first of two Monday Night Football games as Washington travels to Pittsburgh, and this will be a real test to see how far Washington has come, and the Steelers will show them how far they still have to go. I'm taking Pittsburgh. In the second Monday night game, Buffalo takes on San Francisco, and this will be a very competitive game and will come down to the wire in my opinion. I'm going to side with the Bills here in what should be a field goal contest down in Arizona. And finally, the Ravens play host to the Cowboys. Baltimore will have Lamar Jackson, J.K. Dobbins, and Mark Ingram back in the lineup, and that should be able to make light work of that Cowboys defense that is still prone to giving up the big play. I like the Ravens big here versus Dallas. So that's it for this edition of Football Game Plan's NFL All 32 show. I am Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Be sure to follow me on all of my social media accounts, and don't forget to give Chris James a follow on Twitter at CJFlorida9. We appreciate him stopping by the show. And always subscribe on iTunes, Football Game Plan Podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and smash that subscribe button on YouTube, which is the Football Game Plan Network, located at youtube.com/footballgameplan.
Till I see you by this point, you're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it. Let's do it. We gon' make this thing official. You heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, man. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it. Let's do it. We gon' make this thing official. You heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit, yeah.